quite a busy couple when it comes to church and being involved in church. I studied theology at Newbold College, which is where Victor and I met each other. And after Newbold, I actually studied at the University of East Anglia. I did my postgraduate degree there, so in Norwich. So I'm also very fond of Norwich. And Victor and I were talking now when we were in England that if we ever going to get a house or somewhere to be in England, it will be somewhere in East Anglia.
Yeah.
Very, very fond of East Anglia, very close to our hearts. That's where we started our ministry. And we love it whenever we can go back there. We actually spent a night in Lavenham when we were over in England now, which was really nice because it was close to Colchester and Hadley, where we used to live. And yeah, it was just good to be back. Victor and I, we have 3 children. We have Miriam, who is now 22. She was born while Victor was pastoring in Colchester. Miriam is studying to become a teacher. And then we have Matthias, who is 20. He has just finished his national service in the Norwegian Army, where he was trained as a smoke diver, they called it. So they trained him in the fire department in the Air Force in the Norwegian Army. And then we have Miranda, who's 18. She is in her final year of the A-level equivalent in Norway. So she goes to the Adventist high school here in Norway. But in addition to those 3 kids, we actually have a 4th child, a little bonus girl called Emma, who's 7 years old. We've had Emma since she was 2 years old. She spends 7 to 10 nights a month with us. She's the daughter of a single mom who is all on her own. So her mom reached out to the social services in Norway and said, I'd like some support. I need some support. Do you have a family who can be a support family for my daughter? And they actually got in contact with me and Victor, because at the time, Victor was the football trainer for our son's football team. So the lady who's in charge of the social services in the county where we live, she knew Victor from football, and so she knew our family, and she asked, would you be willing to be, in Norway you call it a support home for this little girl? We live extremely busy lives, so we wasn't sure we were able to have time for that, but our children said, of course we will make time for that. You know, we have a happy home and we need to share that home with people. So we included Emma in the family. And like I said, Emma is now 7. She's been with us since she was 2. She's actually with us this weekend. So I got a little snap from Victor earlier where he was in church with Emma and from Sabbath school with Emma. And she is very clear on the fact that I'm her bonus mom, Victor's a bonus dad, and she calls Miriam, Matthias, and Miranda for her brother and sisters. So yeah, officially we have 3 kids, but really we have 4. So we're very happy to actually have a small child still, since our other ones are now growing up and starting to try to leave home, even though I keep trying to pull them back home again at times whenever I can. I'm like, oh, why don't you just come home? So that's the way of parenthood, isn't it? You have to let your kids go. But even if they don't live at home, they're still in your heart and they're still with you. I think if you ask any of my children to describe me, they would first of all say that I have tons of energy. I'm always on the go. I'm always dashing from one place to another. There's always things happening. And the other thing they would say is that I'm always positive, almost too much so, I think they would say. When I wake them in the morning, you know, when they were kids, still, I mean, the youngest one, Miranda, still had to wake up. She's not very good at getting up in the mornings. I would always go and say, good morning, it's a new day, new possibilities, you know, which can be annoying, especially when you're a teenager and you just want to have a lay-in. But that's me. I mean, my husband is not quite like that. He takes an hour or 2 to wake up in the morning, but I'm kind of on the go from the moment I open my eyes. I'm a yes person. I find it very difficult to say no. And I realized that's because I really want to make a difference. I want to be involved. I want to contribute. So in my free time, I say free time because I realized I don't really have free time, but I run the local Pathfinder Club. I do babysitting for various family in the church who need a bit of help now and then. I'm known to my family to continually tidy around the house. So whenever I walk around, I always take things from one place to another. So I'm kind of tidying as I'm on the go. I always try to cook dinners from scratch because I want them to be healthy. I bake bread once or twice a week. How often depends a bit on whether my son is at home or not. If he's at home, I bake twice a week. If he's not at home, it's nothing once a week. I vacuum, do laundry, dust, clean, worry, stress. I have a super busy brain that tries to think of everything at once. So my husband, he never asks me what I'm thinking about, because if he ever tries to ask me what I'm thinking about, it just one thing after another keeps coming. And my friends, they laugh at me because even when I'm on the phone, I try to find things to do while talking. So I'll then do the dishes or fold laundry or something while I'm even talking on the phone. So I realized for me, it's a lot about efficiency, about using every moment available to me. And I'm afraid, I think this is a fairly common life that I live. I think it's very similar to how many of you maybe live. I don't know if it's a female thing. I find that often men are actually a bit better at kind of actually having downtime to just relax and take things as it comes. But I think a lot of us, and women in particular, since this is a Women Day of Fellowship, I thought I'd try to talk from a female perspective. And I think that many of us tend to be really busy with family, with work, trying to fit everything into a day, trying to get as much as possible accomplished, things ticked off the list of stuff that needs doing. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of women today, we work outside of the home, but still the majority of us take the main responsibility when it comes to the domestic chores and organizing the children and the home, in addition to work outside of the home. So I think a lot of us end up being like Martha, who we can read about in the Bible in Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42, where we rush about trying to get as much as possible done, being hospitable, sorting out a family, getting our jobs done, and never really having much time to be like Martha's sister Mary, where we take time to just sit still at Jesus's feet and listen. So busyness, demands, and expectations, they're not really a recent challenge for us women. And I think it's so fascinating that we find that challenge even in the Bible. It's the fact that we try to run a household while also doing things outside of home is something that even some women in the Bible time did. So one of the stories that I really find quite interesting in the Bible is kind of a very short story, and it doesn't say very much, but it's a story that we find in the book of Acts. In chapter 16, verse 11 to 15, we find a little story about a lady called Lydia. And she's mentioned there twice in that little story. And Lydia, she was a working woman. So very much like many of us are today. She was originally from Thyatira, but she was living in Philippi, where she met Paul when he was on his second missionary journey. Lydia was a seller of purple cloth, which the city she came from was actually famous for this purple cloth. And Lydia, she seemed to have moved from Thyatira to Philippi to do her trade there, to sell her cloth in that city. And archaeologists, they have found among the ruins of Thyatira the inscriptions relating to dyers' guild in the city. So it might be possible that Lydia was a member of this guild. We really don't know what her position was, but what we do know was that she ran a business and she sold this cloth. But in addition to that, we also can read in the Bible that Lydia was a worshipper of God. And when Paul found her, she was honoring the Sabbath, because we can read that she was gathered with a group of other women on the Sabbath at a place of prayer near the river outside of Philippi. So it's this group of women gathered there next to the river, praying together on the Sabbath, and Paul comes along. And Paul then starts speaking to these women. And the Bible then says that God opened Lydia's heart, so she accepted what Paul was saying. And after she became converted of what Paul was telling her, she got baptized along with the rest of her household. And we don't know what the rest of her household refers to, if it's only her family or it includes her servants as well. We don't really know that. But it was Lydia and her household were all then baptized. And after that, she insists that Paul and his friends comes and stays with her at her home. So she opens her home to these men who's just preached and shared the gospel with her. And the fact that Lydia, as a lady, could invite these men to her home to come and stay with her indicates that she was a woman who was in charge of her own household. She might have been a widower. We really don't know what her position was, but she was obviously a lady that had a household that she was in charge of, and she was able to invite somebody to come and stay in her house. And she urged them to come and stay with her. She said, if you believe I'm a true believer, then please do come and stay with me. And the missionaries, they did indeed judge Lydia to be a true believer. So they went and stayed at her home while they were in Philippi. Lydia's conversion, it actually marks a new period in the Bible. She was the first person who got baptized in Europe. So she was actually the first believer in Europe. Up to that point, the gospel hadn't gone further than Asia Minor. So in fact, on his journey, Paul's original intention had not really been to go to Philippi, but God led him there. God changed Paul's plans. So Paul followed the vision that God gave him, and he traveled, and on his journey, he met Lydia, whose heart was opened, and she received the Lord. And we actually hear about Lydia's hometown later on in the Bible. In Revelation is the other place. Revelation chapter 2, verse 18. It refers to a church in Thyatira, which was Lydia's hometown. And we have no idea who started that church, but who knows? It could have been Lydia, who then brought her new knowledge, and that she then brought the gospel back to her hometown. We don't know, but we know for certain that she had a link with that town where there's a church that's mentioned in Revelation chapter 2. And to me, this story of Lydia in the Bible is a great example how women often work. Lydia was obviously a lady who was very dedicated. She wanted to contribute, and she showed hospitality to those who brought her the good news. And she wouldn't take no for an answer, which is also quite female. We won't really take no for an answer. Lydia was a working woman with a thriving business to run, in addition to running a household. And I can just imagine at times that she felt tired and overwhelmed. But I'm very impressed with the fact that her heart and focus was obviously in the right place, and she was open to the presence of God in her life. And the thing is that in these busy, demanding days that we face every single day, which I think all of us do, whether we are male or female, we face busy, challenging days. It's very easy to feel overwhelmed. It's easy to feel like we don't manage everything, that we fall short, that we fail. We might lose patience with those close to us. We might have a breakdown even. When you read, in research and news and stuff, you can read that mental health is not very good these days. It's on the, mental ill health is actually on the increase, is on the rise in today's society. And they say that 1 in 5 women experience a common mental health disorder, such as an anxiety or depression, compared to 1 in 8 men. So there's quite a number of people, both male and female, who struggle with mental health issues like anxiety or depression, loneliness, and things like that. And hopefully you are lucky, and maybe you haven't had too many serious challenges so far in life. Maybe you don't feel like you're struggling too much mentally. But the fact of the matter is that women in particular often have a very strong feeling of responsibility, especially for people that are close to them. And this might be because women at times can be more empathic than men, I don't know. But I think that women often tend to worry and stress more than men often do. They also have, they say that today's young people, the generation they grow up now, they have the attitude that they always need to perform. They need to always feel like they do well, which also can cause a lot of stress and worry for young people today. And if you always feel a need to do well, to perform, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. And I think that is something we can all identify with at times. And then it can be difficult to acknowledge that maybe you struggle. And I think especially as Christians, it's often hard to acknowledge if life is hard, if life is challenging. We hear it all the time, that we can find peace and rest in Christ. But and we try, but we still can find life challenging. And then we feel like when we then go to church, we feel like we have to put on a perfect kind of mask and pretend that everything is fine and that everything is okay. It's very hard to come and actually show what life is like in reality for you, and to be vulnerable to people, even at church, unfortunately. But the fact of the matter is that God really wants us to come as we are to him. He wants us to be vulnerable, to acknowledge our struggles and our shortcomings, even though we often feel like we have to have it all together before we come to the creator of the world. While all Jesus asks us of us is to just take the time to come and sit at his feet. So I think it's important that we ask ourselves a question. What is it that might cause us to stress and worry? What is it that burdens us so much? Because I think that often there are more perceived expectations rather than real expectations. Often we think that people or even God expects us to manage everything. We think that we have to do certain things, to look a certain way, or to manage everything. Well, the reality is that you have to look at these expectations honestly and say, is this just me? Is it just what I think I ought to do and manage? Or is it actually what others expect from you? And you have to remember that just because someone asks you to do something, it doesn't automatically mean they expect you to do it. You are permitted to also say no at times. So this might be demands that you yourself place upon yourself more than what others demand of you. You have to be careful with reading things into what other people say and do, which they haven't actually said or asked. Often I think that can be a real problem in relationships with your spouse, is that you will read things into what your spouse has said or done and interpret it wrongly to what they actually meant. So it's important to think once or twice before responding when your partner says something to you or asks something of you, to say, okay, is this just me? Is this just my interpretation, or what are they actually saying? And maybe ask for clarification if you're uncertain, rather than to just react. It's important to be honest with yourself. Are you pushing yourself too far? Signs that you are pushing yourself too far can be things like, are you very irritable? Do you feel tired all the time? Are you feeling very negative, depressed? Then maybe it's time to take stock of things, make some changes to refocus where you're going in life. The way Jesus responded to Martha, when Martha came to him and said, I'll tell Mary to come and help me. Then Jesus said to Martha, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary had discovered what it was worth being concerned about. And I think that's important to us. In order to refocus, there are certain things we need to remember. We need to remember that we own our own feelings. Don't blame others for how you feel. You are in control of your own life. And if you need help or support to process things that have happened to you in your life, then make sure you get it. So be honest with yourself. And the second thing is, be honest with your family. If you feel like you're doing everything at home, then express those feelings in a constructive manner to the family and ask them how they are going to contribute. Often, we as women, when we get exhausted, it's like, we have a go at our spouse or our children, and just like, oh, why don't you do this? And da, you expect me to cook you dinner and to do this and do that. And it's like, it's only when it kind of boils over that they hear it, rather than doing it calmly when we are in a rational state of mind. When you're feeling calm, you can say to the kids and say, I really do not have the time or energy to cook dinner every day. Which days would you like to be in charge? Which days would you like to contribute to the household? I have to say, I am truly blessed when it comes to my kids. I know that all parents are extremely subjective when it comes to their children. And so, of course, am I. It's very easy to see the wonderful sides of them. But right now, actually, all three of my kids are living at home for a year. My two oldest are actually now coming home for a year. And in connection with that, my oldest daughter, Miriam, she made a rota for the family, where she said, okay, we're all adults. We can't expect mom to do everything like she did when we were kids. So we all had to contribute. So she took the initiative and told her siblings and my husband, which days do each of you want to cook dinner? So we now have set days where, so I only cook dinner twice a week these days. Victor cooks twice a week, I cook twice a week, and the kids cook one day each a week. And little things like that, it's nice when the kids get old enough that they actually recognize this, where you don't have to tell them and they take initiative. But when they're younger, then you might have to guide them and say it. But it's important to say it in a nice manner and to say it lovingly rather than in an annoyed manner. So it's about being honest with yourself, be honest with your family about your limitations. And the other thing is, be honest with your boss if you work. Maybe, you can feel flattered if you're given more responsibilities, or you're being offered a promotion maybe. But then at the same time, maybe in your heart that it will put too much strain on you, or it will stress you out even more than it will be rewarding. So then maybe you need to say, thank you for your offer. Thank you for your question, but I really can't take that on right now. So, make sure you are able to also set boundaries in your workplace as well as in your home situations. But I think, yes, be honest with yourself, be honest with your family, be honest with your boss or with your workplace, but most importantly, be honest with God. Come to him as you are, with your worries and with your failures, with your shortcomings, as well as with your successes and your joys. And make sure that you take time to just sit at the feet of Jesus. Take time for yourself to reflect and to have some downtime. Live life proactive rather than reactive. We talked a little bit about this at Sabbath school as well. And I think it's important to be proactive in your life. Find out how you switch off the best, how you can most easily find time to sit at the feet of Jesus, and try not to worry too much. The quote on the post there, "Run, Forrest, run," was taken from the film Forrest Gump, starring Tom Hanks. It came out in 1994. Again, it makes me feel very old because I think it's one of the first films it's the first film I watched with Victor, my husband. And Forrest, he was a boy, for those of you who haven't seen the film, Forrest was a boy who gets bullied as a child because he wears these braces on his legs. And he's not very smart either, quite a simple boy. But when the bullies then try to get to him and to kind of push him about and stuff, his friend Jenny, she shouts to Forrest, "Run, Forrest, run!" And later on in life, when Forrest becomes an adult and he faces difficulties and challenges and hardships, he runs. Running has become his coping mechanism. That's how he deals with difficulties in life. So I'm wondering, what is your coping mechanism when trouble strikes in your life? At one point in this film, when Forrest experiences that Jenny, his childhood friend and the lady he loves, leaves him, he goes on another run. And this time is a very long run. He keeps running. And after 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours of running, he finally decides to stop. And he then says, "I think I'll go home now." Forrest was finally ready to go home again, to face the challenges of his everyday life, to deal with the pain of missing the one person that he felt that he loved. And I think that many of us at times feel like running, just running away from everything. But there are times in our lives when the only answer to our problem is to stop running and to go home. Home might be a physical building. It can be your family. It can be the church. But I think for us, the main source of home, our main home, should really be our Heavenly Father. And He always wants us to come home to Him. Like I said, that I as a mom always want my children to come home and to feel like they want to come home. It's the same for God. He always wants us to come home to Him. I think it's important that we try in our everyday busyness to find a little bit of time to just sit at the feet of Jesus. Because it's difficult to know where to start if you want to make changes in your life. And then it's important to fill your life with things that bring you joy, things that bring you energy and happiness in between all the chores and all the duties. We might be busy working women like Lydia or running a household like Martha, but we need to remember the one thing worth being concerned about, and that is to take time to sit at Jesus's feet. I try every day to start the day with Jesus. So before I get out of bed, I lay in my bed and I say a prayer to myself. I always pray that Jesus will fill me with love, with patience, that He will bless me and my husband and our children, and that Jesus will help me to love my family and to show that love every day. And I think that helps me to start the day in a positive manner, that I take those 3 minutes to just say a little prayer before I jump out of bed and get on with my busy life. But in addition to that, I try every day to spend a little bit of time to do one of my hobbies. I love to read. I'll read almost anything. I'll read all sorts of books, all sorts of different genres. I So it varies what I'm reading, but I love reading. The other thing I do is knitting. So I knit. I'm knitting jumpers or vests or whatever. So I always have some wool with me, and I can sit down and knit. I find it very therapeutic to just switch off, sit there with the knitting needles. And the third thing I do is that I run. I go running, jogging. This is something I don't really admit to my husband. I run with my husband, and my husband calls me a runner, but I don't want to acknowledge that I'm a runner. So to my husband, I just say, no, I just go training a bit with you. I'm not really a runner. But 3 to 4 times a week, we go running. And it's something that I have done on and off through my whole life. I try to kind of keep in shape by running. But it's gone very up and down how good I've been at doing it. And this last time when I got back into running again, it was actually in April this year. My husband had been running for a few years. He's done a marathon, and he's quite fit. And he said, Grine, I really think you need to also do something to look after yourself more. I think he was trying to say we're not getting any younger, any of us. So I said, I don't have the time, I don't have the energy. So he started making a training plan for me. And we started with a 2-kilometer run. I'm not sure I can even call it a run. I think it's more like I probably walk faster than I did those first runs. That was 2K runs. But he gradually just built it up, and he would run next to me and say, slow down, Gunnar, slow down. You're not quite fit enough to run that fast. Because I start off, and then after about 100 meters, I was exhausted. But Victor made me pace myself. He's like, he held me back. And these days, I don't actually think twice about running 10Ks. It's fine. It just goes. And that's just because he just holds me back. It's still at times, when we run together, he'd be like, slow down, you need to pace yourself. And I think we need someone like that in our life, someone who is by our side, who at times can say, slow down, pace yourself. If you're going to be able to run the race, if you're going to reach the goal line, you need to be able to pace yourself and slow down and just take time to at times sit at Jesus's feet. So I want to encourage you today, in particular you women, make sure you look after yourself and your health, your spiritual health and your physical health. Find out how you can unwind, how you can switch off, how you can recharge, and be conscious of what kind of legacy you want to pass on to the people around you. And don't be scared of asking for help or receiving help, because we humans are created to support each other, to care for one another. The scripture reading today, I haven't mentioned it so far. I'm just mentioning now at the end. It was taken from Matthew chapter 22, verse 37 to 39. It says, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. And God says this. He says, as yourself, you need to love yourself. And I think often that our harshest critiques are often ourselves. We never think we are good enough, clever enough, pretty enough, that we achieve enough, that we manage enough. But you need to know that you are loved by God. You are created by God, and as his child, you are amazing. You need to practice looking at the world through the eyes of God, at both ourselves, our children, our spouse, our colleagues, our friends, our neighbors. And I want to encourage you today to learn to regard yourself and others with God's divine affection. And this affection that God has for us, it doesn't deny the full reality of humanity, of our shortcomings and our faults, but it focuses on the beautiful and the lovely, on the charming. And it takes great joy in seeing one another. And I think if we practice on focusing on the positive, on seeing the beautiful, rather than on the challenges, on the negative, it will mean that our outlook on life will be positive and it will be loving. And this you can only manage if you take a bit of time every day to sit by the feet of Jesus and get filled by his love. Maybe you do it out in nature, maybe you do it through music, maybe you do it through reading the Bible. You have to find your way or where you can manage to connect with God every day. And if you're a parent or a grandparent for that matter, then remember that as Christian parents, the greatest gift we can give our children is for them to experience growing up in a loving and fun home where faith is experienced as a blessing and not as a burden. It's very easy to be focused on the do's and don'ts, but I think more than anything, it's important to just love your children unconditionally, and that they experience that growing up in their home is a place to grow up where it's love, where it's fun, and that they will be like, I think that's the greatest thing that has moved my heart when our children said, when we were asked if Emma could come and be a part of our family, our children said, yes, of course, we have a home that's happy, where we care for one another, and we need to share that with others. And if the children experience that, then it will be a place they will want to come home to as well. And if they experience that God is that loving God, they will always as well come home to God. And my prayer is that the Lord will open your heart like he opened the heart of Lydia, so that you may feel the blessing to be a part of the family of God today.
Amen.
Well, what can I say? Just first want to thank Pat, Anna and Serena for putting on this wonderful Women's Day program. It's been an honor and a pleasure to have Katie singing for us. And of course, it's been even more of a pleasure having Greena, our long friend, to present such a timely and wonderful message for us at this time where we are constantly bombarded with so much things around us in our lives. We really don't have enough time to stop, think. And I don't really want to put anything on what Greena has said, because she has said it so wonderfully well that even I was struck sitting here. Normally, I'm a bit distracted, but I can't say I was distracted. Not because you're a long friend, Greena, but because the message was extremely timely and wonderful. So I want to thank you for that. And thank everybody for attending today. We've had a wonderful turnout, and we really should do this more often, because I noticed Sabbath school started promptly on time and we had lots of participants. So maybe the women should take the program more often. I don't know. But yes, thank you again, Pat, Anna and Serena. And for our closing song, we're going to sing Having Jesus, all our sins and grief to bear. What a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer.